Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports, and today we're going to be talking about the financial hit on SA Rugby, which is actually not as bad as I think a lot of people would think, but a big warning in many ways about the potential impacts that COVID-19 has had on the organization, and speaks to a lot of why maybe future decisions and decisions made in the next couple of years are going to be very financially driven. Before we look at some of the stats and some of the numbers and stuff like that, please do smash like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Right, so yesterday SA Rugby confirmed its 2020 financials. And RUGBY'S announced that SA Rugby made a loss of 7.9 million Rand in 2020. However, what is so impressive about the fact is that it's only 7.9 million Rand, because SA Rugby also reported a decrease of 45% in revenue in 2020. In 2019, in the Rugby World Cup winning year, obviously winning the World Cup and all that kind of thing really does help. SA Rugby reported revenue of 1.3 billion Rand. In comparison, in 2020, SA Rugby only recorded 710 million Rand, which left a 580 million Rand disparity between the 2 years. And so when you look at that, when you think there was a 580 million Rand difference, the fact that it was only a loss of pretty much 8 million Rand is actually very impressive, and I think SA Rugby needs to be commended for managing to keep it so low. But what it does sort of speak to is the fact that the reserves are gone, basically. You know, there are not massive reserves that SA Rugby has to sort of ride a very long COVID storm, and I think that's why it's so important that the Springboks are getting onto the field. Even those 2 games, you know, for Georgia, TV rights wise, those are big money generators. And it was also and that's one of the main reasons that SA Rugby have been pushing to try and get fans into the stadiums for the British and Irish Lions tour. The British and Irish Lions is a multi-million, even billion Rand affair. By the time you have all the traveling fans, all the ticket sales, you know, all the memorabilia, it's a huge money generator. It's the biggest rugby spectacle of the year. You know, after the Rugby World Cup, the biggest rugby spectacle is the British and Irish Lions tour. It only happens every 12 years. So it represents a massive opportunity for SA Rugby, and the fact that there are not going to be any fans, no traveling fans, is a massive, massive loss to the organization. And I think that's why it's going to be interesting to see in the months and years to come how much this affects the sort of day-to-day running of SA Rugby. How much does this affect the types of teams we try and host here when we have incoming tours? How much does it affect the opposition when we go overseas? Are we always going to play the opposition for rugby reasons, or are we going to look at some of the most lucrative and financially opportunistic opportunity to play certain sides which can raise a lot of money? Because SA Rugby needs to try and beef up their reserves. Because if we have another year where Springboks don't play as many tests, you know, the losses are only going to get worse. So in theory, we're hoping for quite an extended Springbok calendar this year. We've got the British and Irish Lions series, we've got that 2 tests against Georgia. Hopefully we're going to see Rugby Championship as well, and then we've got an outgoing tour as well. And we're hoping, touch wood, that, for example, Cape Town Sevens happens, because that's a big money generator. So I think as a South African fan, we could probably be quite relieved and quite happy the fact that they've managed to do that. SA Rugby managed to do this and still remain financially viable. RUGBY'S said it's actually a triumph to still be in business after the year they had in 2020, which I think it is to a certain degree. But he said, you know, there are a lot of cost-cutting plans, and also what you've also got to look at is how much more expensive at the moment it is to put on events. Pro 14, Currie Cup, Super Rugby, there was no ticket revenue whatsoever. There's also obviously added costs when you think of all the safety measurements that have to go in, you know, COVID tests and all the sanitizers, and you know, the idea of bio bubbles and stuff like that. When you've had the Varsity Cup, for example, I mean, it must have been quite interesting to see how the Varsity Cup expenses were compared to other years, you know, with no traveling, but having to put all these players up for all these months and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's these sort of small things which are quite interesting. But that's why I think it's in a very precarious, tricky situation where I think SA Rugby are all right for now, but going forward, unless they start sort of finding ways to sort of regenerate the revenue, it's going to be in big trouble. And I think that's why we've gone north. That's why we've gone to Europe, because for years, there was always an issue with SANS on the fact that we were bringing a lot to the party, especially money-wise, but weren't always getting the reward for it. And I think going to Europe with the 4 sides now, being part of the Pro 16, we are now going to get pounds and euros brought back into our rugby system, which is going to be absolutely massive. Not only for SA Rugby, but also for the teams. When you think that we can't match somebody's salary because they can earn so many more pounds, and they can earn pounds, which they can then send back here and convert in a favorable exchange rate and stuff like that. If these sides now get sort of pounds injected into their side, hopefully it means that they can start keeping players, and also means they can try and even start bringing players back. So financially, it has always made sense to go north and be part of Europe. If our sides can start doing well in the European Champions Cup, for example, that's big money, and then hopefully we can get. I'm not saying we're going to be able to bring Andre Pollard back. He's one of the best players. I think he's like 2 or 3 best paid players in the world. But get your players back like Rohan Janssen van Rensburg, your Franco Mostert, your De Prier brothers, not necessarily the massive big money earners, but your Andre Esterhuizens. If you can get those sort of players back into South African rugby, it will do a lot for the local system. So that's what the situation is at SA Rugby financially. I think they do deserve a lot of credit for managing to keep the losses so low. I think hopefully we're going to have a big financial injection this year with the Springboks being back on the field, with having the British and Irish Lions tour. Hopefully it becomes a bit of a saviour, even though it's not going to be as much revenue as what would have been the case if it was a normal tour. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new. We've got 5 things learned from the second round of the Rainbow Cup SA coming up as well. So make sure you keep an eye out for that video when it comes up. My name is Steven. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll chat to you soon.